Hey friends! This is our Qlab project tutorial. So I'm going to walk you through the Qlab interface, I'm going to walk you through the specific project files, and then we're going to do the whole programming project together. So you're watching this hopefully before you get into it, and then when you guys jump in, you'll be able to follow along again as a group when you work through the project together. So here we go, Qlab project programming. So what I've done without you is I downloaded the resource audio files from Blackboard and expanded that out. It's right here. I also have opened this Qlab project assignment sheet, so that is also open on my desktop. And then over here I have my Qlab programming project file. So I opened Qlab, I said yes to the licensing agreement, I asked for a new workspace, and I then saved it in the same folder as my audio project files with the name Qlab Programming Project. So those steps happened before you got here, but you can do those things in order to have everything look basically like mine. The next thing I have going on is this little sunshine, this little settings tool, and it has a whole bunch of different base settings. What I'm going to do is unclick this little checkbox, or I've already done it, but you'll do this, where it says auto number new cues with increment. I don't want Qlab to be given my cues numbers without me telling them. So I want my Qlab numbers to match my cue sheet, so I'm not going to have it auto number things. Then the next thing I'm going to do, which you may not have to do, you may have only one output and then it's not a problem. But I have all of this various different patch situation, and I want to just have audio patch 1 be this Samson Go mic, and audio patch 2 can be Mac Mini speakers. Audio patch 3, I don't need these other two things, right? You may need to patch your Zoom audio device or something like that in order to send the sound to Zoom. I'll do that test a little bit later and see what the cleanest way to get it from your computer into that Zoom platform so your friends can hear the sounds as well. But for our basic setup, Samson Go Mic is where my headphones are plugged in, and so that's why I chose that as patch 1, because that will be our default. So the default patch 1 will be that Samson Go Mic or whatever device you choose as your output, okay? There are a bunch of other tabs over here. I'm going to skip them for now, but just know you can do video projection design in Qlab. You can do lighting. I don't know why you would when there's software for that that's specifically designed, but Qlab has that functionality if you don't have any money. And then there are a bunch of other controls. The only other one you might want to look at is this key map, which just tells you what your default keyboard shortcuts would be. But the ones that we really care about are this don't number the cues checkbox and setting up our audio output so that it goes where I want it to go. So I'm going to just click done. Here I am. And then I have these files over here. Qlab is a referencing software, which means that it doesn't import the files. It's not like iTunes where it like brings it into its own library and makes a copy of it. It just points to where the files go. And for that reason, I want to keep all my files over here in basically the same place so that I don't lose them and get things disconnected. Another useful strategy that I've not done here, but that you might want to do at some point, is either numbering your files by the scene that happened in the show, the page number that they go on, the letter of their cue number. And if you change the name of the file to match that information, then your file folder on your computer will stay just as organized as your cue list. So that is a file management pro tip that can be super helpful, right? Because then when you sort by name in your Finder, it'll organize your files in the order that they appear in your show. That can be really helpful. But those things aside, you will want to go find some pre-show music. So I've not uploaded pre-show music for you. I've just uploaded some transition and sounds that are used in this project. So you will want to go find at least 3 songs that you can use as your pre-show music. Mine are here. I pulled them from some other show about the 90s or whatever, so they're pretty hilarious in that specific way. And then I've made an audio folder where I can kind of put all of that stuff together. You can do that if you want, or you can let it package the whole show at the end, which is what we'll show you how to do here. Okay, here we go. So let's see what our first task is. Pre-show music playlist. Great. So here is the quickest way to get some songs into our Qlab file. Quickest way is to go to pre-show folder. Here's the songs. I'm going to select them, drag them from Finder into Qlab. And now they are connected. If you look over here in this basics tab, it tells you the basic path, right? So this is target, tells you where the file is in that basics tab. Name is right here. It's also right here. You can click right into there in order to change the name. Triggers are how it goes, like what causes it to go. In this case, the go button or the space bar is the default for that. Time and loops is if you wanted it to infinitely loop, or if you wanted to change the speed and play it faster than its typical sound playback level. Audio levels is super important. So audio levels is how loud is this song. And it also is going to tell you what patch it is outputting to, right? So in this case, it is outputting to the audio coming out of the Samsung Go mic, which is what I want, so that I'll hear it in my ears. Let's see what happens when I hit go. All right, this is so loud. I can't even hear myself think. So the first thing I'm going to do, I have to select this cue number again. I have to take this off my head. I'm going to put it over here just so you can hear me yelling over top of it. I have to select this cue again. And you'll see sound is coming out because the little bouncing levels are showing right on this cue. I'm going to change the master audio level to -20 dB. So now it is a reasonable level that I could, for example, have a conversation with my friend while I'm waiting for the play to start. I could go even lower. I could go to like -25. It would be fine, right? But let's say let's say -25. Let's not get crazy, okay? So -25 is the new audio level for this song. Much, much better, okay? I want to set that level now for all of the songs in my pre-show sequence, just as a baseline. You can adjust them as you go, but I would say start at something much quieter. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that, -25 for all of these pieces. Okay, so now I have my 4 songs. When this song ends, everything is just going to stop, right? I'm going to actually turn on this little tab on the side. This is the progress bar. So I can see what's happening in the active queue side, right? So if I wanted to skip ahead to the end and see what happens here, it will now stop. Nothing is happening, right? Nothing is happening, and it doesn't keep playing. This is not the life I want when I'm running pre-show. During pre-show, I want the next song to play, and then I want the song after that to play, and then I want the next song after that to play. I want it to keep playing the next song of this playlist until I'm ready to give my curtain speech, at which point it will fade out, okay? So let's talk about how we set it up to do that. The first thing we need to do for our pre-show songs is we need to make them into a group so that they are acting sort of as a unit. That allows me to fade out at whatever point in the sequence I need to. So I'm going to hold down Shift and select all 4 of these songs, and then I'm going to hit this stack of little boxes, which as I hover over it, it says group. I'm going to click that button there, and I'm going to give it a name. Oh, is pre-show. That's the name. I'm also going to give it a cue number from my Qlab Programming sheet. It is QA, so I'm going to number it over here. Okay, so what this does, all it does when I hit the spacebar now, is it starts playing the next song again. So I have to listen to this 10,000 times, right? It'll still stop. Over here, there is the continue, auto continue column. okay? So there are a couple of different options that this column will give you. And one of them is to continue immediately, right? So here's your three options. Do not continue, auto continue, auto follow. So auto continue looks like those three little arrows. That means when I start this song, it will immediately start the other song at the same time. No bueno. We don't want that to happen because now our brains hurt from two songs that don't match. When you click it a second time, it will switch to auto follow, and that is the option that you want. And I'm seeing now that instead of letting you just click to change that arrow, it is actually opening the drop down every time. That's fine. It used to be that you just click it and it will switch from one thing to the other, but then now it is opening this little continue window. Cool. Okay. So that's great. So now what will happen as we play through this pre-show list is this song will play. When we get to the end of it, right, it will automatically start playing Pretty Fly for a White Guy, right? Wow. That's happening. That's happening in my ears right now. Okay, right? So, and it will continue through this playlist. I don't have that setting set up on we're not gonna take it because I don't need it to continue past this pre-show list. Like if we run out of pre-show music, then we have bigger problems, okay? Usually you want to just give yourself more pre-show music than you're planning on having the house open so that you have some time built in. So, let me just hit escape to stop the madness for a second so I can build my next cue. My next cue will be QB on the list, which is fading out pre-show, okay? So this is the pre-show fades out for a live curtain speech. We aren't using a built-in microphone cue for this curtain speech. You could re-record it. If you pre-recorded it, you would have a cue for that. In this case, we're just fading out this pre-show cue stack. The fade cue is this thing right here, okay? It looks like a little level, a sound level change over time. So we are going to drag one of these fade cues below pre-show. Right now, it has no target cue, right? It doesn't know what I want to fade. It does have a default action of 3 seconds, and I am going to now, in order to target pre-show, I will drag this pre-show folder over this fade cue. All right, so now it says fade pre-show, but it's still not doing anything, and you can see that because there's an X over here on the side that's like it's not going to do anything. It doesn't work, right? So what we need to do now is give it some actual functionality, and that is going to be to change the levels down here in the info. We want to set this audio level all the way down to -infinity. That'll fade it out completely. We can make this an absolute fade, which means that it will fade it absolutely to nothing, to -infinity, nothing. And then we're going to click this little checkbox that says stop target when done, because we want it to fade it out and to stop playing it silently in the background, which is an option that you have in Qlab. So now when I set all of this up, right, first song starts playing, the arrowhead has moved all the way down to here. We're going to quickly click in here and name that B. So this is now my next move, right? My next cue that's ready is this fade and stop. When I hit the space bar, it will, no matter where I am in that cue stack, it will fade it out right then and there, and now nothing will be playing anymore. So that is using fade and stop and targeting it to a group. You can also target it to individual pieces of music or whatever. We are now going to do that, okay? So I have given you this MP3 Vibe Vendetta, and we're going to use that as our transition music, okay? So step 3, transition into scene 1. We have transition music, which will start playing, and it will cover the start of the rain, okay? And then we have ambient rain in the background that fades in under the transition music. These things will all happen in one cue, and that is cue C. So 3 and 4 both happen in QC, which is bringing up transition music, bringing up rain after that. And then it will fade out once we're ready to start the scene. So this is a situation where we're like waiting for actors to get into places in this hypothetical weird play we have, okay? So I'm first gonna grab this transition music. I'm actually gonna rename it. So if I double click in here, I can just rename it transition music so that it's clear what that cue is, okay? That's in now. What I want it to do, and let's just listen to it. That's very loud. Transition music is very loud. So let's set a level. I'm gonna set it something like that. You can use your judgment to your ears, okay? So transition music, set. And it says transition music covering the start of rain. Ambient rain in the background fades in under the transition music. So transition music is not going to fade up. It's just going to start. However, we will then have our rain fading up underneath that. So that comes in right underneath it. It is also going to want to come in at a lower level. It actually wants to come in all the way at negative infinity so that it can fade up to the appropriate level, okay? So we start at minus infinity and we will add a fade cue that goes with it, that targets it, and that brings it up to a level that is more appropriate for this transition. Okay, so this will be happening underneath. And then we will have the transition music fade out. That'll be QD. So these three pieces are everything contained in this first transition. We're going to group them once again, just for clarity in my cue sheet, right? I don't want my operator to get confused. We're going to call this transition 1. And when we play this, we want to have things, remember I was talking about auto continue versus continuing I was talking about auto continuing versus auto following. We want this to be set up to auto continue, but I want to give it a little bit of a second to establish before, and that I'm going to use this pre-wait column. I'm going to give it like 3 seconds to establish that pre-show music before the rain starts, and we will auto continue this as well. So now transition music will start, rain will start 3 seconds later, and this fade immediately starts with the rain sound. So both of those things start at the same time. Let's see what this sounds like. Right? So it's a full 6 seconds before we have everything happening at once, but that's okay. I now need a new cue that will fade out the music completely and will fade down the rain. We're going to make a new group. We're going to call it D. Inside this group, we're going to have 2 fade cues, okay? And if I hover over, I can get fade cues to sit inside of this group. Isn't that cute? The first fade cue is for the transition music. It's going to fade that out completely, right? Minus infinity, stop target when done. Rain is just going to fade down, right? It's not fading out completely. It's just fading lower because I want it to continue over the scene, okay? I'm going to change the fade time on the rain to like 7 seconds so that it's a little bit slower. And then we're going to type, let's call this scene 1. And we're also going to change the group mode. And that is going to be to start all children simultaneously. This gives you this timeline mode, which can be really helpful in figuring out how things look, because it gives you a visual representation of how stuff is sequenced. But we are going to start all children simultaneously for scene 1. Let's see what that does, right? So it fades the music out, and it's just ducking that rain down even quieter. And that is now going to play through the scene. Okay, so now I have some rain playing in the background. You can see it over here in the active cues that the rain is still continuing to play in the background, and the music is turned off. Awesome. Next thing on our list, backup gunshot on a hotkey trigger. Okay, so this is kind of a cool thing. We have this cue list, right? We are going to create a new list. This cue list is going to be called backup sound, okay? In this cue list, I'm just going to put things that don't play in the order of the show, right? So the main cue list has all of the cues that you would play during the course of any show. This new cue list is just your backups, because, for example, you might have this situation, right, where there's a prop gun that is used in the scene, and we want to create a backup gunshot sound cue using a hotkey trigger. So this is, the gun doesn't go off. I need there still to be a gunshot. And so I'm going to have this on a backup button on my keyboard, and that's called a hotkey, so that I can play it if I need it. So we're going to put the gunshot sound into this cue list. And I'm going to just change its name once again so that it's clear. We're just going to call it Gunshot. You can also do this in your actual file name. You can rename it in the file name. That doesn't hurt either. And then let's look at it. That's what it looks like. Great. That's our gunshot. It needs a trigger. It wants to be a hotkey trigger. I'm going to use G for gun as its hotkey trigger. You can change its audio level. That's pretty loud, but we'll probably leave it pretty loud because it's a gunshot. And in order to run that cue, where with our main cue list, right, we were hitting the space bar to go with the next cue. In order to run this gunshot, you just hit the letter G on your keyboard, and that backup cue happens, okay? Right, gunshot, bang, great. All right. Let's go back to our main cue list. So now we have that set up. Gunshot is now set up. Great. Transition into scene 2. There's transition music, which would cover the ambient rain fading out and the morning rain fading in, the morning sounds fading in. The morning sound will play under scene 2. Okay, so in our cue sheet, this all happens as one sequence. So where before we had things all kind of happening sequentially, we want this all to happen as one sequence, and we're not waiting for anything. It's just going to continue through. So let's just build the sequence for this transition. We're going to, again, make it a group. Let's call it E. I'm going to call it transition 2. I'm going to copy transition music. So Command C, Command V, put it into that group. So we'll use the same transition music as we used before. I'm also going to bring in a fade cue, because one of the things that's going to happen is that rain is going to fade out completely. So I will target the rain completely. I will tell it to stop target when it's done and to fade it out completely. Maybe a little slower than 3 seconds, maybe like 4 seconds. And then once that is done, I want to fade in this morning sound, right? So morning sound is over here. Let's bring it over. Let's set its audio level to -infinity. Let's have this auto follow, which means the fade out will complete before the next thing starts. Let's bring in another fade cue and have it, have it fade up morning sounds. That auto continues, and have it faded up in like 4 seconds. Once that is complete, I want to fade out transition music. Okay, so I'm going to bring in another fade cue, attach it to transition music, have it auto follow, and have that transition music fade out. And I have to tell it again what to do, negative infinity. So this is going to bring morning sounds up to some level. Okay, let's see what happens now. Right? The rain is fading out. There's birds chirping, right? Fresh morning sounds are playing now. And transition music has faded out. Great, that's transition 2. And these birds will just keep playing forever. Well, they won't. They'll keep playing for the length of that song, of that track. And if you want to make sure that they play forever, for example, with your heavy rain sounds or your fresh morning sounds, you can always go into this cue and set that time in loops to infinitely loop, right? This is only a 9-minute track, and if my scene is longer than 9 minutes, I need this infinite loop button in order to allow the little chirping birds to continue playing in my ears or in my theater. So that's how you have something loop. Boom. So now it's just going to keep playing along until the scene ends. So next I have a tea kettle sound effect, okay? And I want it to do 2 things. I want the tea kettle to start happening off stage. And then I want it to stop when the actor picks it up. So let's get our tea kettle sound. Bring that in. And let's see what's going on over here. Yeah. But it stops, right? So this is kind of awkward, right? Because I actually want it to continue playing for until ever, right? So what I need to do, and I just hit escape to stop other things from happening. In order to make this work for my piece, I need to actually adjust in this time and loops tab on that sound. I need to adjust when it starts, when it ends, and I need to add in that infinite loop, okay? So now let's look at it and let's listen and see if we've gotten it so that it'll just keep playing. And there's a little bit of a weird thing. Let's hear it again. Yeah, there's a little bit of a click. If you're a sound designer, do what you need to do with that to make it not have that little click. You can zoom in on it, on the waveform. It's just kind of a clicky sound, I think. Yeah, that's as good as it gets. All right, so it's gonna literally keep doing this infinity. Cool, so that was Q at F. Was that the key kettle, the key kettle is playing from off stage. Let's call that F. The key kettle sound is F, and then we want to use what's called a stop cue to just stop the tea kettle, as if an actor walked off stage and picked it up. So the stop cue is up here, and I can just drag and drop it, target that, and then when it'll stop, right? If you feel like it's more realistic for it to like fade out ever so slightly, you can use a fade cue instead of a stop cue for this, okay? For this QG. So tea kettle sound stops. That was G. So then we have to give ourselves some intermission music that will also fade out your morning sounds. I'm gonna just copy my pre-show and rename it. You do you. But if I copy it and I rename it Intermission, right, it'll be the same songs. Maybe I'd put them in a different order for intermission, right? Who knows? Maybe I'll take out Pretty Fly for a White Guy. And the way that I just deleted a cue this is a secret, is I hold down Command and hit delete, because if you just hit delete, nothing's going to happen. It's trying to keep you from breaking your life. If you hold down Command and hit the backspace button, it will actually delete the cue for you, or delete the line on your thing. All right, so we have intermission. We do have this fresh morning sounds continuing to play in the background, so I need to, at the beginning of this intermission sequence, have those fade out. So I'm going to target fresh morning sounds, and I am going to have it fade all the way out and stop that target when it's done. And then I will come in here and make sure that we have everybody set up correctly. Okay. So now let's go back to transition 2 just to get everything up again. I have my morning sounds. Those have now faded in. The transition music is fading out. I've got my tea kettle. I have my tea kettle stopping. And now I'm at intermission. And when I hit the space bar, it fades out, fresh morning sounds, and it's playing We're Not Gonna Take It for intermission. Great. Last step is to fade out that intermission music. So we just need to create one last file or one last fade. And I'm going to call it, target that group again. And fade and stop intermission. Okay, so that's the whole Qlab programming project, right? You've now got the whole cue list built. Transition music seems to be continuing to play in the background. You can see that in active cues as well. That's not really what we want. So we need to go in and make sure that nothing is playing silently in the background. That just chews up your processor. So where that happened, right, was this fade transition music where I did not click this checkbox for stopping the target when it's done. So now we do want to make sure that that is checked so that it actually doesn't continue playing silently in the background, okay? And that's it. That's your show, right? G for Gunshot. All right, cool. Next step is going to be to save this file, and then we're going to do what's called bundling the workspace. And what this will do is allow you to email me or Dropbox me, or maybe even submit to Blackboard, the whole Qlab package. Typically you would do this onto a flash drive so that you can like hand it off or have it as a backup someplace safe that's not part of whatever computer that the Qlab show is living on in case something happens to that computer. So if you come over here, there is a bundle workspace button and Qlab Programming project, and I will typically put whatever today's date is, right? So I'll put 04/03/21. That's today's date, and I'll save it into this folder, and I click save, and it will create a copy of this folder, of this project, bundled right here, okay? So that bundle now will include both the Qlab file with the new name that I just gave it, and also all of the associated audio files, right? So it will pull together all of the audio files I used into one folder for safekeeping, and that folder will sit right next to the Qlab Programming project file, and this whole thing will now transport everything in a group together, right? So I'm not sure if you can upload this as a folder to Blackboard. You might have to right-click and compress it into a zip file. So if it doesn't let you submit the folder, then compress it into a zip file to submit that on Blackboard. So that is your Qlab programming project. We'll do this together in class so that I can help you when you forget what switch or button or can't figure out why it's not working. We will also, in class together, talk about setting it up so that Qlab is sending that audio into Zoom so you can actually hear it. All right, friends, thanks so much, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.